We are excited to announce our last speaker of the day, Daniella Levy Pinto, the manager at NNELS. Daniella is joining us today from Toronto, Ontario. She'll be speaking on the topic of building accessible libraries across Canada. Just as a disclaimer, questions will be answered after the presentation during allotted Q&A period. Please welcome Daniella.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Perfect. Am I turning video on?
You can if you're comfortable, yeah.
I am. Is
Awesome.
it working?
Yeah, we can see you. You're good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniella Levy Pinto, and I am joining today from Toronto, which is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, among others. I am the manager of NNELS, the National Network for Equitable Library Service. And I lead digital accessibility initiatives to eliminate barriers and work related to accessible publishing that I will be talking about. My background, my academic background, that is, I have a Ph.D. in political science from the University of Toronto. I am totally blind, so if I am not focusing on the camera, that's why. I have been a user of assistive technologies for many, many years in my different roles in professional and academic settings, and I am very happy to be joining you today, and thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to see that students are now paying so much attention to the topic of accessibility. I will start by just summarizing the content of my presentation. I will provide a quick overview about NNELS. Then I will provide an introduction on print disabilities, diversity of reading, and assistive technologies, including a short demonstration of a screen reader. I will then talk about accessible publishing, what it is, the steps to create accessible content, and then some considerations on inclusive design. As you, well, I don't have a slide deck. I will have resources to share with everyone that will be circulated after the event. And I should mention, I mean, PowerPoint is a highly visual medium. It's not my strength. But I hope that the demonstration that I will do for you will be interesting, and I will be talking about ideas and concepts. So really, if you can follow what I'm speaking about, you're not missing anything by slides or I guess by not having slides. So just let me turn off alerts before I forget. Okay. And the turning off alerts is because I have my my screen reader on. So if there are any alerts, I get distracted because my screen reader talks to me. So to talk about NNELS, NNELS stands for National Network for Equitable Library Service. And essentially, NNELS is one of the organizations in Canada that provides accessible books in alternate formats for people with print disabilities. NNELS is hosted out of the BC Libraries Cooperative, and it provides service in most provinces in Canada, not in Ontario, but essentially NNELS works to ensure that readers with print disabilities in Canada can have access to the same content as everyone else, and hopefully at the same time. A lot of the work that NNELS does is informed by the lived experience of people with print disabilities. So we actually have a fairly large team of accessibility testers and consultants, including people who are blind, have low vision, or learning disabilities. And they help identify barriers to content and on reading applications, and also create awareness about print disabilities and accessible reading and accessible publishing. NNELS is working with publishers and other stakeholders to advance the work on born accessible, which born accessible publishing, which I will talk about shortly. Before doing that, however, I do want to make sure that we all have a common understanding or the same understanding about some of the terms I will be using. So I'll start by talking about print disabilities. What do we mean by this? According to Canada's Copyright Act, print disabilities are a subset of disabilities that prevent people from reading print. What does this look like? Well, this includes visual comprehension or mobility impairments. So there's a wide range of print disabilities out there, anything from total blindness to any degree of low vision, to conditions like Parkinson's or missing limbs that may prevent people from holding a book or turning the pages, or even things like post-concussion syndrome. There are print disabilities that are permanent, like blindness, for example, but others that may be temporary or situational. Examples of temporary print disabilities would include an eye infection that would cause someone to have a temporary print disability, or a broken arm, and if it prevents people from holding a book. If we think of poor lighting, when someone is trying to read in poor lighting, that's a situational or environmental print disability. And all these print disabilities, whether they're permanent, situational, they can be mitigated with assistive technologies. And assistive technologies enhance the reading experience for people with print disabilities mostly. So to define assistive technologies, they are hardware devices or software developed with features that are specifically helpful for people with disabilities. For example, white canes, they're not digital, but they are still an assistive technology that helps a blind person get around. Or if you think about the bumps in the keyboard for the letters J and F, for example, that's assistive technology that is helping really everyone to position your hands in the keyboard. And we also have, of course, very high-tech assistive technologies like screen readers. A screen reader, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, and I hope everyone is, but if anyone is not, a screen reader is software that reads essentially any text on the screen. This is important to remember, it's text. If it's an image, the image may have a description, and that's something that the screen reader reads. But if it's, let's say, a PDF, a picture of a document, there's nothing the screen reader can do with it because it's not, there's no text. It's just an image. So essentially, for the screen reader, it has to work, it has to have text, and the screen reader also allows navigation. There's also screen magnification for people who have low vision, either hardware or software. There are Braille displays that connect to a computer or a mobile device and show the text in Braille, and Braille with a series of pins that lower and raise, and they form the different letters. There are also voice controls or switches that are used by people who have mobility impairments to control computers with these technologies. And I also would like to mention that most or all operating systems now have a built-in screen reader and built screen magnification software. So in terms of screen readers, we have VoiceOver in iOS and OS and Apple. For Android, we have TalkBack. Windows, we have Narrator. And of course, there are other screen readers, more specialized. One is a major one is called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access. It's free for anyone to download. And there's another one called JAWS, and that has a cost. So now that we have talked about what print disabilities there are and some of the technologies, it is clear that there's really a significant range of print disabilities. So when we think about design or creating accessible content, it is really important to think about those different needs, because if you don't plan for them, those users will be excluded from the content. So just to translate how the assistive technologies work, I talked about how screen readers work. Low vision readers rely on not only screen magnification, but they need control over how text is presented. So they commonly magnify the font, but they may choose different font types, or they may need to adjust the color contrast or the background and foreground color. They really need control here over how text is presented. Something similar is true for people with learning disabilities, such as dyslexia. They benefit from having control over how text is presented. They need specific fonts, sans serif fonts that are easier to understand. And people with learning disabilities also benefit from having text highlighted and synchronized with speech as it is highlighted for better comprehension. And people with mobility impairments rely on, as I was saying, switches or voice controls. But for these to work, they need to have, the content needs to be very well structured, because otherwise those technologies will not be able to navigate it efficiently. Some statistics to bring all this back to the Canadian context. In Canada, the estimate is that approximately 3 million people have a print disability of some kind. So it's a lot. It's about 10% of the Canadian population. Out of these, 1.5 million people approximately over 15 years of age have a visual disability of some kind. About 4% of the Canadian population, or 1 million people, have a learning disability. Put this in context. Also remember that the Canadian population is aging, and with age, we have vision loss related to age, macular degeneration, and things like that you may have seen in your grandparents, but the population is aging. So this is only going to become more urgent. And the population is, aging population is growing not only in Canada, but worldwide as well. And this is important to remember because, again, these are people that will want to access any content that you work on or you create. Or, well, not any content, but content that anyone creates. So worldwide, the estimate is that the number of people over 65 years of age will triple by mid-century from what it was in 2010. So in 2010, we had in the world 500 million people over 65 years old. And in 2050, we're going to have 1.5 billion people. They will need to read. So we need to think about them. Now, what is accessible content? Accessible content essentially is flexible. It has features to enhance the reading experience, regardless of which technologies people are using. And accessible content starts digitally, and digital content has the potential to be accessible, but importantly, not all content that is created digitally is accessible. It's not automatically accessible. It is only accessible if designed with accessibility in mind and following guidelines and standards. So I am going to show you now a video demonstration of a couple of EPUB files, so ebooks, one that has good features, one that has doesn't have, is not very accessible, and you will see. So, and here, not only see, I am going to share my screen with sound.
Meeting controls.
Okay, now I'm going to navigate.
Zoom to move to an Ryerson graphic design. Movies and TV. Movies
You're hearing my screen reader. So I'm going to start the video, and I would like someone to confirm once it starts if you can hear it. If you can just say yes, I can hear. I'll start and then pause.
Pause
We're
button to
reading an
activate.
accessible EPUB.
You're
Play
good.
button
You're
to-
good.
Perfect.
Pause button to-
We pull up the navigation pane, select a chapter, and press play.
Chapter 3. Before English. Our study of the history of the English language begins well before there is any English language to speak of.
To skip this section, we just press next.
Chapter 4. Introduction to Phonetics and the International Phonetic Alphabet.
The book is well laid out with excellent chapter navigation. Now let's try a book that's more challenging to read. The navigation pane is empty. Play reads one word at a time.
Introduction. Capital T. He. Cattle. Industry. In.
And next only skips by 15 seconds.
Ranch. Hands.
This book has been produced in fixed layout and has no chapter navigation. Accessible publishing only requires small changes, but it makes a big difference.
Play button to activate. Pause button to
Today,
activate. Press
we're
spacebar. Now
reading
play
an
play button to
Sorry. So you see the two examples here, and this video was created by someone in my team. And you have an EPUB here, or like two EPUBs. What he meant by reflowable. So essentially, you cannot adjust any of the presentation. Is fixed. Like the opposite of well, reflowable is when you can adjust the presentation. And the book that posed the most problems, that the screen reader read one word at a time, was the one that was produced in fixed layout. So I mean, it's like a PDF. There are ways to make them more accessible, but just for you to have an idea. Before I stop sharing my screen, I just want to give you a glimpse of how I read.
Meeting Zoom. Ryerson 01. Word.
Okay, so
Right, edit, page 1. Thank you. Lived experience.
okay,
Quick key.
going to the
Heading to outline.
next
Page 2.
heading.
Heading 1. About NNELS works to NNELS works to ensure readers with print disabilities can have access to the same. NNELS works to ensure readers with print disabilities can have access to the same content as period.
I think you get the idea. Just
Movies and meeting controls. Meeting controls. Alt.
okay. I stopped sharing screen, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. Thank you. So you have an idea of how the technology works. In some of the resources, or some of the resources that I will include, will take you to the NNELS YouTube channel, where you can find longer demonstrations of a lot of things using assistive technology and good and bad content and whatnot. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse. Now, moving on to accessible publishing. Accessible publishing considers the needs of all users, and it prioritizes accessibility through the incorporation of accessibility features. So accessible publishing is guided by standards. It is very important to follow standards, and is brought to life through accessible reading technologies, like what you just saw and heard, the screen reader. Who benefits from accessible publishing? Everyone. we, of course, are focusing on this work to improve the reading experience and really to improve access to people with print disabilities. But there's a very strong argument to be made for that accessible content is content that is better structured and it works better for everyone. If a book doesn't have a navigation panel, arguably everyone will struggle to get to the desired section, not only people who are using screen readers. So we really are talking about better products for everyone. So for accessible reading to work, which is a lot of what NNELS is doing, we of course provide the, accessible content through libraries, through public libraries. But we talk about all the pieces in the ecosystem, in the reading ecosystem that need to be accessible so that we can talk about a fully accessible reading ecosystem. So of course we need the content to be accessible. In this case, we're talking about books, but we also need web content to be accessible. We're talking about the same thing. The platform, if we're talking about an ebook, the platform to get it, so like to find it in the library or to purchase it, needs to be accessible, all the functions in the platform. And also the reading application has to work with the screen reader. Some reading applications are just like content reading applications in mobile devices, for example. Some of the most common problems are that the buttons to activate functions are not labeled. They may have an icon, but they don't have a text label, which again, the screen reader cannot read. So you hear button, 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 button. Great. What does this button do? Does it erase the book? Does it bookmark it? So all these three pieces, content, how to get it, and how to read it, need to be accessible. Now, moving on to Born Accessible. Born Accessible is essentially content that is created to be accessible from the start. It's pretty easy. It's born accessible from the time it's created. It may not be perfect, but it will have a good structure, and it will not be necessary to remedy later. Because if something doesn't have headings or doesn't have image descriptions or whatever features it may lack, when for example, some of our users reach out to our to NNELS requesting a book, we cannot just give them whatever book. We have to make sure that the book will work, so we have to fix it. So it's duplicating work that could have been like barriers that could have been prevented. So,
hey Daniela, just
yes.
a 5-minute time check.
Okay, thank you. So the steps to creating an accessible or accessible content in general start with content that is well structured. Use styles and don't format characters. When you use styles, for example, in Word, you add meaning to those elements, and then the screen reader can find it. Also, make sure to add image descriptions. I won't get into this. I understand you have a presentation on this. So any image, if it doesn't have a description, that content is not reachable, is not accessible for those who cannot see it. Use accessibility checkers. So export, rely on these and correct it before exporting to accessible PDF or whatever format, but pay attention to this. And also reach out to the experts, hire people with lived experience, reach out to them because they really can help prevent barriers. To conclude, I would like to leave you with some thoughts related to inclusive design. Accessibility is fundamental for something to be inclusive. It cannot be an afterthought. So think about the design decisions that you're making early on. Which font are you using? Is it going to be reflowable? If you're designing marketing materials, color contrast can render content completely inaccessible to someone who may have low vision or someone who's colorblind. So all these decisions are important. And if you think about inclusive design, these things, you will have more inclusive products that work for everyone. And really what we need is accessibility to be the baseline and not an afterthought. So accessibility should be, this is super important. Accessibility is a collective responsibility. It's not a job for someone to do, at the end when, no. That's costly, that's hard, that causes disruptions. Don't do that. Talk about accessibility with your colleagues, and think about the implications of the design decisions that you are making. Think about when you're designing something, even posters, like you're designing with people. So again, think about everyone. And we need to think beyond the typical user. In this world with so many difficult things that we're going through, we need everyone to have access to good information, and we cannot exclude people. So now you learned all this. Please remember that accessibility, again, is everyone's responsibility. That's really the most important message I would like to leave you with. I can continue talking, but I don't know how we are in terms of time. I lost the track of time. So I guess we can open it for questions, and yeah.
Yep, sounds good. So thank you so much. That was brilliant. So if anyone does have any questions, do drop them in the chat. But to start, we have a question of, do you recommend the use of automatic tools for testing accessibility?
I guess the simple answer is not really. I think it is better to do some testing than nothing, but with a caveat that these automatic tools only get about 30% of the problems. So they may tell you if the heading structure is correct, or if alt text may be missing, but they will not be able to tell you if the alt text is actually meaningful, or guide you through other pieces that do require human testing. And so I think it's better. I talked about the checkers, which in a way are automatic tools or automated tools. So to start, yes, but not in lieu of engaging with people with lived experience.
That's a great point. Secondly, do you have any recommendations for recruiting accessibility testers?
I think you can find them. You can reach out to local organizations providing services to people with print disabilities, like, just Googling Toronto, in the case of Toronto organizations, blind, cognitive, whatever things you're looking for, you can reach out to the specific organizations serving those, those needs. Twitter and social media is, I think, also a really good means of getting people. There's a hashtag. Oh, this may be interesting. AYA11Y, which stands for accessibility, and the 11 is because of the letters, like the number of letters in the word. So anyway, hashtag A11Y stands for accessibility. And also one important thing to mention, accessibility testing is professional work. It is not uncommon that someone will just, can you just take a look at this? Tell me if it's accessible. And the thought is appreciated, but this is professional work. It's not just take a look at this. We may need to look into the code and provide, solutions. So just to say this is paid work. It's not, it should not be expected that people will do it for free, just for the, or I guess in exchange for information. Information should be accessible regardless.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point. And we will be reaching out for more resources. And I think that hashtag too is extremely important. I didn't know that existed, and to know that is very useful. So thank you so much.
Great.
I think that's it for all the questions.
Excellent. So again, thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on the colloquium. It is a very important topic. I also want to mention there's a business case to be made on accessibility, and there's also legislation, and they go kind of hand in hand. Legislation is requiring more and more accessible services and products and content. So if you know about this, you will be more marketable. And you are the future, really. You know these things. Please talk about them, learn more. And also, I guess one more thing I would like to mention, it can seem overwhelming at times. There's a lot to learn, but really anything you do can make a difference. And remember, accessibility is everyone's responsibility, but it's also done at every step of the way. And it's also incremental. And it's better if you have alt text. If it's not perfect, well, you will learn more, like you will practice. But so just continue to do what, think of this and work on this. And good luck with everything. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for attending and speaking. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.